Footwork. Footwork keeps a fighter safe by changing where exchanges happen. Instead of absorbing punches, the fighter steps out of range, pivots, or circles to reset the angle. A short step back can make a jab fall short, and a quick pivot can force the opponent to turn before throwing again. Because the feet move first, the hands don't have to block as often. Ben Whitaker shows how movement alone can control the pace of a fight. In his early professional bouts, he rarely stays in front of opponents after throwing. He'll step to the side or circle away, forcing them to turn before they can punch. That constant repositioning makes it difficult for opponents to set their feet, and it keeps Whitaker in control of distance without needing to block often. In his fight with Oscar Valdez in April 2022 in Las Vegas, because Stevenson controlled the space between them, he could see punches earlier and avoid them without large movements. Footwork takes stamina, and if the legs slow down, it becomes easier to get trapped near the ropes. But when the timing stays sharp, strong movement limits how often a fighter needs to block because the punches fall short before they can land. Head movement. Head movement keeps a fighter safe while staying close enough to punch. Instead of stepping away, the fighter slips, rolls, or leans just outside the path of incoming shots. A small turn of the shoulders can make a jab miss by inches, and a roll under a hook keeps the head off the center line while setting up a counter. Because the fighter remains in range, head movement is often tied directly to offense. Each slip or lean creates an opening to answer immediately. Canelo Alvarez mixes subtle head movement into his defense, even when standing his ground. In his May 2021 fight with Billy Joe Saunders in Arlington, changes. Mike Tyson built much of his early success around constant upper body movement. During his rise in the late 1980s, he moved his head side to side as he stepped forward, slipping jabs and rolling under hooks before firing short combinations. Against Trevor Berbick in November 1986 in Las Vegas, Tyson repeatedly slipped punches on the way inside, which let him close distance without taking clean shots. The movement kept him balanced and in position to punch with power at close range. Head movement demands sharp timing because the fighter stays within punching distance. If the rhythm is off, the punches land clean. But when the timing is right, slipping and rolling allow a fighter to avoid damage while staying in position to counter. High guard. The high guard is the most common way fighters protect themselves. Both gloves stay high near the temples, elbows tight to the ribs, so the head and body are covered at the same time. When straight punches come down the middle, the gloves close together to catch them. Hooks land on the forearms or get taken on the elbows with a small turn of the shoulders. Because the hands are already in place, the fighter doesn't need big reactions to stay safe, which is why this guard shows up most when exchanges get close and fast. Canelo Alvarez spends long stretches of fights working behind a tight guard, especially when opponents try to push him back. In the first bout with Gennady Golovkin in September 2017, Golovkin pumped the jab and followed with short combinations along the ropes. Many of those shots hit Canelo's gloves and arms instead of landing clean. After blocking, Canelo would step out or fire a short counter to the body. The guard let him stay calm under pressure without giving up ground. Artur Beterbiev carries his gloves just as high, but he keeps walking forward while shots land on his arms. In January 2024 against Callum Smith, Smith opened the fight throwing long combinations. Beterbiev kept his guard tight, stepped through the punches, and gradually pushed the fight into close range. Once he was inside, he could let his hands go with short hooks and uppercuts without taking clean shots on the way in. With both gloves high, side-to-side movement can be slower, and it's harder to see punches coming from wide angles. Even so, the high guard remains the safest option in heavy exchanges because it keeps everything protected while the fighter holds their ground. Philly shell. The Philly shell turns the body slightly sideways, with the lead shoulder raised and the rear hand near the chin. The lead hand rests lower, ready to catch or tap punches. Jabs can be picked off with the rear hand or slipped outside. Straight right hands are taken on the front shoulder by rolling the torso, which softens the impact and creates a lane for a counter. Hooks are handled by leaning back, bending at the waist, or bringing the rear hand across. Because the stance is angled, less of the body is exposed, but the head is not fully covered, so timing has to be sharp. Terence Crawford moves into this guard once he has a read on rhythm. In July 2023 against Errol Spence Jr., he spent long stretches catching jabs with his rear hand and rolling right hands off the shoulder before firing straight counters. The lower lead hand gave him a clear view of incoming shots, and each roll naturally set his feet for offense. Floyd Mayweather is the clearest long-term example of the guard working at the highest level. Against Canelo Alvarez in September 2013, he repeatedly let punches hit the shoulder or glance off his gloves, then answered with short right hands down the middle. His balance stayed centered, so even when he leaned or rolled, he was always in position to punch back. Ryan Garcia's fight with Devin Haney in April 2024 showed how awkward the guard can look when done wrong. Garcia spent stretches trying to lean away and roll shots, but he often turned too far, exposing his back and losing his stance. Instead of staying balanced, he ended up offline and unable to counter. The guard only works when the shoulders, feet, and timing stay connected. Without that, it leaves openings rather than closing them. Long guard. The long guard keeps the lead hand extended in front of the body while the rear hand stays near the chin. The extended hand acts like a barrier, touching or measuring the opponent and interrupting their rhythm before punches fully develop. Jabs and right hands can be slowed or redirected by that lead hand, while the rear hand is ready to catch anything that gets through. Because the arm is already out, it also helps control distance, making it harder for opponents to step in without being felt first. Alexander Usyk uses the long guard constantly to manage range, especially against bigger opponents. In his first fight with Anthony Joshua in September 2021 in London, Usyk often posted his lead hand on Joshua's gloves or chest as Joshua tried to step forward. That touch disrupted Joshua's timing and gave Usyk time to pivot out to a new angle. The extended hand wasn't just defensive, it helped him dictate where the exchanges happened. Dmitry Bivol relies on the same idea when he fights at mid to long range. In May 2022 against Canelo Alvarez in Las Vegas, Bivol repeatedly kept his lead hand in front, catching jabs and preventing Canelo from closing distance cleanly. When Canelo tried to step in with combinations, he had to work around that frame first, which slowed the attack and allowed Bivol to reset his feet before throwing back. Holding the lead hand out for long stretches can be tiring, and it leaves the body more open if the opponent slips inside quickly. But when it's timed well, the long guard makes it difficult for opponents to enter range. Parrying. Parrying is a small defensive action where a punch is redirected instead of blocked. Instead of absorbing impact on the gloves, the fighter taps or guides the punch off its line with a short hand movement. The most common version is the jab parry, where the rear hand nudges the opponent's lead hand to the side. Because the movement is short, the fighter stays balanced and ready to counter immediately. Parrying works best at mid-range, where there's enough space to see the punch clearly, but still be close enough to respond. Terence Crawford uses parrying as part of his timing control once he settles into a fight. In July 2023, against Errol Spence Jr., Crawford repeatedly caught or brushed aside Spence's jab with his rear hand. Each parry left Spence slightly out of position, which opened the lane for Crawford's straight left hand. The movement was subtle, but it disrupted Spence's rhythm and made his entries less predictable. Pernell Whitaker showed how effective parrying could be when combined with reflexes and positioning. In his 1993 fight with Julio Cesar Chavez in San Antonio, Whitaker frequently picked off jabs with quick hand taps rather than covering up. Those small deflections kept him in range without absorbing clean shots, and they let him counter without resetting his stance. Against opponents who feint often, it can be risky if the fighter reacts too early. When done well, though, it's one of the cleanest ways to defend because it keeps the fighter balanced and ready to punch. Clinching. Clinching happens when a fighter ties up their opponent to stop punches from being thrown cleanly. Instead of stepping away or blocking, the fighter closes the distance and wraps an arm around the opponent's shoulders or arms, forcing the referee to step in or the action to reset. It's most common after a fighter finishes a combination or when they feel an opponent building momentum. The goal is simple. Slow the pace and remove space so punches can't land with full power. Tyson Fury uses clinching as part of his control of distance, especially against shorter fighters trying to work inside. In his rematch with Deontay Wilder in February 2020 in Las Vegas, Fury repeatedly leaned his weight onto Wilder in close range. By tying Wilder up and forcing him to carry that weight, Fury limited Wilder's ability to set his feet for power shots. Each clinch broke the rhythm and made the fight unfold at Fury's pace. Isaac Cruz uses clinching in a more compact way during inside exchanges. When opponents try to create space after throwing, Cruz often steps in and ties up the arms briefly before resetting. In his March 2024 fight with Rolando Romero in Las Vegas, Cruz would close the distance quickly after exchanges, forcing short breaks that kept Romero from establishing longer combinations. The clinch allowed Cruz to stay close without giving his opponent time to build offense. Clinching slows the action and can frustrate opponents, but it also stops the fighter from attacking while they're tied up. When used at the right moments, it breaks momentum and resets the exchange. Pressure defense. Pressure defense happens when a fighter reduces incoming offense by staying first and staying close. Instead of stepping away or waiting to block, the fighter moves forward behind tight punches. The opponent has less room to set their feet, which limits clean shots. When the distance stays short, long combinations become harder to throw. The pressure itself becomes the defense. Artur Beterbiev shows this clearly. In January 2024, against Callum Smith in Quebec City, Beterbiev stepped forward behind a tight guard and short jabs. Smith tried to create space for longer punches, but Beterbiev kept closing the gap. Because the distance stayed short, Smith's shots often landed on arms or came off balance. The forward pressure reduced the number of clean punches Beterbiev had to defend. Pressure defense requires conditioning because the fighter must keep moving forward without pause. If the forward movement slows, the opponent can reset and regain control of distance. When sustained properly, though, constant pressure keeps the opponent reacting. Low guard. The low guard is when a fighter keeps their hands near waist level instead of protecting the head with a tight shell. Because the gloves are not covering the face, defense comes from reaction time and upper body movement. Jabs and straight punches are avoided by leaning back or slipping outside the line, while hooks are rolled with the shoulders. The lower hand position also keeps the arms relaxed, which can make punches faster, but it leaves less margin for error if timing is off. Teofimo Lopez often fights with his lead hand low while reading his opponent's rhythm. In his November 2021 fight with George Kambosos Jr. in New York, Lopez spent stretches leaning just outside jab range with his hands relaxed, looking to counter as Kambosos stepped in. When the timing worked, he could fire quickly without needing to reset his hands first. But the low guard also meant he took clean shots when he misjudged distance, showing how much it depends on precision. Prince Nassim Hamed built his style around reflexes and movement from a low hand position. In his April 1997 fight with Kevin Kelly in New York, Hamed repeatedly leaned away from punches and brought his hands up only at the last moment to counter. His balance and reaction speed let him stay unpredictable, even while taking risks that a tighter guard would avoid. With the hands low, vision is clear and counters can be thrown quickly, but the defense relies almost entirely on timing. Crossguard. The crossguard isn't used so much anymore, but it was used by some of the most legendary heavyweights. It places both forearms across the front of the face, with the gloves resting near the opposite cheeks. Instead of keeping the hands high and separate, the arms overlap, forming a shield that absorbs straight punches and hooks on the forearms. Because the elbows stay close to the body, it also protects the ribs while the fighter waits for openings. Ken Norton used this guard throughout his fights with Muhammad Ali in the 1970s. When Ali jabbed, Norton often caught the punch on his forearms, keeping his head protected while inching forward. The crossed arms limited Ali's usual straight lanes, forcing him to adjust his rhythm and punch placement. Norton would then answer with short counters once he was within range. George Foreman brought the crossguard back during his comeback in the 1990s. In November 1994 against Michael Moorer in Las Vegas, Foreman spent long stretches standing behind crossed forearms, letting combinations land on his arms while he edged closer. The guard allowed him to stay patient without taking clean shots until he found the opening that ended the fight with a right hand in the 10th round. Thanks for watching. Check out the links in the description to shop for pro boxing gear.
Whoa.